for us to stop 3 months ago and go, hey, we're 1 year old. So let's do it now. Hey, we're 1 year old. How good's that? Big effort. 105 videos have gone up, various videos and podcasts and bits and pieces. And we've had a heap of interaction from people. So it's been really good. The idea of running this session tonight was, we just thought it was a fun idea to do this live. We've had a number of podcasts out now, and we feel like we've kind of got the hang of it a little bit. So we'd like to do it live, and hopefully we don't muck it up too much. But also it gives everyone the opportunity to come through and ask some questions and questions from the podcasts that have passed, some of the hunts and trips that we've done. We've met a number of you on the ground in the forest. People have come up and found us. We've had people join us on trips. It's been great. So it's an opportunity for people to say hi and these are some questions I've got. It's been fantastic to watch so many of our listeners and viewers going out for their first state forest hunt, taking their first animal, having a great time, messaging us live from wherever it is that they're hunting, looking for extra advice, sending photos and all that good stuff. It's been awesome to watch. And I think I said to Mark way back when we started, if we could help one or two people just get out there and go hunting and experience what we do and be successful, it would be all worthwhile what we're doing. So thanks to you guys for doing it and listening and taking the advice and getting out there. It's been awesome to watch. So anyway, that is my intro. Fellas, have you got anything else you want to add before we kick off some questions?
No, I just to say that I had a personal goal. If we get 20 people who don't hunting, if we can do that, then they'll get some people hunting. They'll influence someone in their family. They might get their family involved, their kids, they'll get friends involved. That's all we need to do. And then all of a sudden, we've got more and more people hunting. We've got more and more people influencing around hunting, and we're, in regards to state forests. So it's all about numbers. This is a pure number game. That's what my aim is, to get us up there and make hunting a viable option for everyone here in Queensland.
Well, Mike, while you've said that, a comment's just come in saying from Nasir saying you guys have already helped many people like me. So you it's working. We're doing it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I can't see it because if I put my glasses on to see you, I can't see them. So thank you.
But yeah, that's coming
perfect
on YouTube at the moment.
Okay,
the live
fantastic.
stream at the moment. So that's awesome. Thanks, Nasir. That's really awesome to hear. I'm glad that you're getting some value out of what we're doing.
And you should probably explain that too, Jono, about we're all over the world here at the moment.
Yeah, so we're live streaming to Facebook, and we're live streaming to the YouTube channel as well. So you can watch us on either platform. You can also put comments in either on Facebook on the live message or on YouTube, whichever platform you choose this evening. We'll see those comments and questions and we'll answer them to the best of our abilities. So please keep them coming. We're here to share our knowledge, and if you've got some knowledge to impart on us, we're open as well.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so the format for this tonight, we're gonna start off with questions that have been thrown at us already, which is great. Good to see some coming in. They're general questions about the year, things that have been done, things that we've covered, and then if we've got some time afterwards, we'll do some more NT discussion, because we've obviously just come back from that. We've put a lot of content up about that, and there's a lot of questions that have come through too. So, excuse my flu. First question. All right.
Okay.
Off the back of a podcast that we did with Gemma Dunn, where we covered a lot of information about traveling. I think it was our pre-NT trip, and I think we were asking Gemma about traveling with firearms and ammunition and all that sort of stuff. How do we find the experience of traveling with firearms, and who did we end up flying with? Mark?
Okay, sure. So we went with Virgin, though. Johnny, did you fly Jetstar as well, or just...
No, I flew Virgin with you guys to Darwin, and I flew back with Qantas.
Qantas, okay.
Jetstar cancelled my flight and wanted me to fly via Melbourne. So
there you go. So that answers that question. So we flew with Virgin. So the firearms themselves, as a package, were an extra case. So we had to book them all as extra luggage. Everything had to be secure in a firearm travel case, Pelican, those type of things. So ammunition had to be separate. You guys didn't take ammo. We got ammo in Northern
We
Territory.
had shipped up, but we had bolts in a locked.
I took ammo, so we took some rifles with bolts removed, and I actually took ammo as well, and the ammo went in a different bag again. So the process itself was pretty simple with Virgin before we got to the airport. I'll define that or clarify that. Online and all that stuff was pretty simple. Yes, we're going to take firearms and booked it in and things like that. And Ian, I think, even called them and said, look, we're coming. Here's our numbers, ticket numbers and stuff like that. When we got to the airport on the Sunday, probably the first mistake we made was we thought that Sunday morning flying out of Brisbane would be, pretty casual. It was crazy. There was literally hundreds and hundreds of people there lined up. And Virgin, you have to go through that, electronic ticketing type of activity before you get to the line. So we started doing that, and you got halfway through, and there's a question that says, do you have any of these things? One of them is firearms. So we went, bing, yes, we got firearms. And then it just says, stop, you have to talk to a person. So I went, okay. So we just flagged down the first person we saw, who ended up being a guy called, I think his name was Wazza, which was even more amazing that Jono knew him, and Jono wasn't even there at the time when Ian and I got there a bit early. So we got pushed to one of those the end queues where people for whatever different reasons get to jump the whole line. So we jumped the whole line, and it was a big line, and people were looking at us because there was like guys with surfboards looking at us with these
guys, the musical instruments,
where they're like guns or guitars type of things like that. So we got through, and we went through the process. There was a bit of it was just explaining and the weight checking and all that stuff. However, then what happened was, to our knowledge, unbeknown at the time, Virgin made an error where they're supposed to call someone up from baggage, and that person then escorts you down to the oversized baggage area to check the firearms in on the plane. We just walked down. They just said go to oversized baggage. So we walked down to oversized baggage, and when we got down there, oversized baggage said, what are you walking around the airport with guns for? And we said, because you guys told us to do this. Mm-hmm. So they then went up and started yelling at the people at the counter, and that was quite funny. And we came back, and then they kind of pushed us to the front of the line of the oversized baggage, so it was gone. They're on the plane. At Darwin, it was a smaller area. It was basically a secure cage. We went to the secure cage. We said, that's our gear. They went, there it is. And, we just picked them up. So it was pretty easy that way. In fact, we kind of said that it seemed to be a really good way of jumping lines to actually get up to the front of the queue to actually have it. Coming back from Darwin was even kind of crazier. When we got to Darwin, we went to the again, it was much quieter. Went to the check-in. The guy doing the check-in didn't really know. One of the more senior people took over, checked us in. That person then escorted us down to the cage, put him into the cage, and as we were walking back, Ian said, hey, can you get us through the security check-in too? And she went, okay, sure. So we went to the special line for the security check-in, and we jumped that line too and got through, and we got up there pretty quickly. So all in all, flying with the rifles was a pretty easy task. You had to do a few, had to be prepared, and you had to pack in a certain way, but other than that, there was no real issues. And what they do is once they're in the case and they've got the yellow tape on them, they're kind of like another object. They just go. Yeah. And so there was no real problem. And walking, we didn't have any problems at all. So it wasn't a difficult issue at all. I'm assuming that travelling overseas would be a wholly different issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a different experience altogether.
Again, I don't have an experience that. I've hunted overseas a number of times, but I've never taken firearms. I've just used firearms in country. But, travelling interstate, and in fact, strange enough, I'm probably going to be hunting with Gemma early next year, and I'll be flying down to Sydney, so I'll be doing it again. So, not a real problem. Just get yourself a good gun box. Get yourself a good gun box. Make sure it's lockable. because it's a bag itself and it has the standard weight limits. You know, you're not supposed to put things like ammo and stuff in there. Well, that was questionable if you can or not. But I put like a fishing rod in there and a few other bits and pieces. So I'd actually use it as a bag. It still only went like 14 kilos, so it was way under. You obviously can't put a lot in there because it's a single gun box, but I was able to put a number of things in there again, which made it a bit easier to travel with it.
Well, I mean, with Ian, so Ian had a double rifle case, and we had my rifle and his rifle in there, and obviously that increased the weight, but it was not an issue at all. As long as you're careful about your weights, I think that's the important one. Is just make sure you're not going to be over. If you think you are, book the extra bag, because you can check in a firearm as sports equipment, but it counts towards your 23 kilos, whatever they give you. So if you've got another big heavy bag, just rather book an extra bag. And
much cheaper doing that up front than it is doing it at the airport.
That's it.
Hey, got another. You're right. Sorry, mate.
I think that's the real lesson is actually just kind of accept that it's kind of cost you $50 extra and book it, and you've actually then got more room to play with and more things than trying to make weight. You're actually now all of a sudden you're 46 kilos. And the other thing is I found the benefit of taking a solid gun box is that then I used it all through the week we're in the NT. I used it as around camp when we were traveling all that distance, and they were sitting in the back of the truck. They were secure. It was actually just a really nice thing to have, rather than just a bag that it would fit in normally. It was actually really good to have a proper gun box with me.
Good stuff. Questions, because there's quite a few and we'll burn a lot of time. Frank, I've got your questions. I can see them posted up. I'll get to you in a sec, but there is a follow-up to this one. I'm going to throw it to Jono. I feel like I'm playing host here for a second. I'm going to throw this question to Jono. On the way back, and the reason I'm throwing this to you is because you had to deal with it. Trophy transport. It was a real problem when animals started hitting the ground, and we're looking at the size and the weight of skulls and bone and horns and all of that sort of stuff. You want to run through how we managed? What did we do with the trophies in the NT on the ground when we were hunting them? What do we do to prep them, and how did we get them home?
Yeah, very good question. Obviously, I got my one down, and then we found the second one, and we brought those horns back as well. And then obviously we didn't have any others. I know you picked up a set of casties, but from a dead animal. But on that last evening when you got one, Mark got one, we had a bit of a dilemma because we had a lot of weight and a lot of horn there. What we did is we actually chopped off as much bone as we could. So we're really just taking the skull cap, not taking a whole big skull because it's just far too much weight. And then really giving those a good clean, getting rid of all the gunk, getting rid of all we had really was the brain cavity and sort of the top of the sinus, I guess, the nasal cavity, cleaning out all of that meat, all of that gunk, all of the anything that's in there, just to try and reduce, some of the juices and the smell that could potentially coming out of those, because some of them were starting to get a bit fruity. We then wrapped them in. We cut off as much bone as we could. Obviously trying to maintain still some aesthetics of the trophy that we wanted to keep. So I think Ian, you've got one that you kept where you've put that bit of leather in the middle and all that. Looks absolutely great. I've done exactly the same. I think we all did the same. But really get as much bone as you can. If you want to bring a whole skull back, you're looking at 30-40 kilos, and you just can't do that. We then took those skulls, we split them down the middle, so we had two individual pieces. We wrapped them up in plastic, tons of gaffer tape, duct tape, whatever you want to call it around there, just really get it sealed in, so that you're not getting that smell and those juices coming through. And we did a bit of a juggling act of trying to work out which bag can we put them in, how can we juggle them with weight, because obviously we've got the weight limitations for the flight, and we ended up having a expedition bag, and Mark would stand there and hold it, and he would stand on the scale, on a standard kitchen scale, get the weight, and we would then add another one and see, are we in weight, are we out of weight, and just juggle it. And we actually ended up getting them all in a single expedition bag, all wrapped up, nicely taped up, nice and, secure, I guess. And I just checked that in as checked baggage. No questions asked, came through, popped out on the carousel here in Brisbane, and away we went. So it was actually pretty painless in my view. I think it'd be a bit different had we shot that big bull that we saw that first day. I think we would have had a bit of a challenge, but they were good representative animals. And so glad to have taken one like that. Also have taken a buck.
But pretty seamless, eh? I wonder what.
Absolutely.
I wonder what it would have been like if you declared that that's what was in the bag when you checked it in. Whether there would have been an eyebrow raised, or I don't know what their policies are, but it was pretty funny. And then we met up with you at the airport at the other end and did a bone swap.
Just did it. Yeah, exactly.
Bone and rifle swap.
Bone and rifle
car
swap.
Park, in the car park.
In a dodgy airport car park transaction. Look, it might have seemed on the outside to be dodgy, but it was actually pretty legitimate. And very seamless actually. And I certainly do the same thing again. Expedition bag, awesome investment, not just for carrying trophies, but the dust there in the NT is just something else. You've got to have a good expedition bag that seals up. Absolutely. They're a godsend. I think next time I'm actually going to pack an extra one all folded up just so that, if we need to bring more trophies back or something, we got them.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to put the smaller one in the bigger one. And carry the big one, and if we need it, then we've got a spare one,
Well, I mean, the one that I've got actually packs down pretty small, so you can have it flat packed. You don't actually have to expand it out, and you can get 80 litre, 120 litres, whatever you want.
It was a very big part of the planning. Bags, who's got what, how many bags we've got, how many we've paid for, how are we going to get everything home. It was a bit of a challenge. All right, we'll move on.
Just the last one on that was in the. I think something if you're going to go to the NT and hunt buffalo or wherever you're going to go, take a luggage scale. I think that was a valuable piece of equipment that we didn't have, and luckily we managed to get one in the hotel. But if you've got one of those little compact luggage scales, where you can weigh your bags and you can juggle stuff around, because we were standing in Brian Boyle's shed, and. Mike was standing on a kitchen scale. It wasn't the most accurate. And look, we went far off, but it would certainly make life a lot easier to take a little compact luggage scale with you and weigh your bags. I think that's a really important piece of kit, because you want to get to the airport, you don't want to have any issues with weight. And obviously you could get someone to check in who's, nice and helpful and friendly and is not, is not going to challenge you on that. You could get someone who is a complete arsehole and goes completely the opposite, and you're 1 kilo over. And you can't take your buffalo horns out because you want to take them home with you. So
you just have to pay some money.
But it's going to cost you a fortune. Rather take a $20 luggage scale that you can buy from Kmart or wherever and weigh those bags before you get to the airport. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
very good. Okay, Harry, I'm turning to YouTube because we've got questions over here on YouTube. First one's from Frank. Hey Frank, good to have you back, mate. And Frank joined us for one of our hunts down in Nundle this year, so it's good to have you there, and thanks for hanging in with us, mate. First question was, where did you go for your first state forest hunt, and were you successful in getting anything, Mark?
I'm thinking it was Nundle, because I'd hunted the raw in the Brisbane Valley. And then I went from the Brisbane Valley and did the end of the fallow rut. Yeah, Nundle, pigs.
Got pigs.
3 of them.
That's successful in your book.
800 meters from camp.
Nice.
Took a speculator on a deer, missed it, and literally walked up on a buck without realizing it and went, oh, there's a buck right there. And as soon as that wonderful Tikka metallic bolt action went click, click, boing, that buck was gone. So, so I've never taken pigs and deer at the same time at Nundle. It's either been one or the other. And it happened this time again. It's either pigs or deer. So, the first animals at a state forest. So that year I hunted Nundle, and then I hunted Pilliga at Christmas, New Year, and I got goats. I got a nice billy just before the New Year, and then early the next year I hunted Severn. So that would have been Nundle would be the first one.
And a follow-up question, or just a quick follow-up question. Over the years that you've been state forest hunting, success percentage in the parts you've been hunting?
I've never not been successful in a state forest.
Pretty damn good. It just goes to show. Even, and have you seen a change in numbers, or is it pretty much you were seeing animals to the start, you're still seeing animals now, you're finding more and more?
So I've hunted Severn a lot. I haven't hunted it as much for the last couple of years, but I hunted Severn pretty hard for 10 years. And at the beginning, it was like, get out of my way, goats. And then it went quiet, and people said, "Oh, well, it's probably getting shut down, lots of shooting." But I actually reckon, in real terms, it probably had more to do with the climate, and the drought, and the drying up, and the way that Severn changed so dramatically. So it did see a dip in numbers, but I'm wondering if what we've just experienced over the last couple of years is going to see those numbers come up again.
Hold that.
So I don't know if it was people or climate. I'm kind of leaning more towards it was a climate.
I want to come back to that because we've got a question that covers that off as well. Jono, your first state forest hunt?
My first state forest was Nundle. The first time, I met you down there, Ian, actually.
Yeah, right.
Lucky Nundle was my first ever state forest hunt. Was actually the first time I'd hunted in Australia since I'd moved from the UK. So I had done, I've hunted here. I've hunted some goats before, but I was on private land, never public land. So this, but I wasn't living here then. So this was my first hunt, and I went down to Nundle. Didn't know what to expect. Completely newbie to state forest hunting. Got a lot of advice from myself and the other guys. I went down with the ADA trip on that one. I wasn't successful. Didn't take an animal. Saw animals. I was with a mate who was completely new to hunting, and had an opportunity on them, but he was far too slow. So it wasn't that there was a lack of opportunity. There was animals there. It was completely new experience, and I was trying to help him, watch him. I'd never hunted with him before, so wasn't sure about his gun skills, etc. So I was obviously very cautious, and but I had an awesome trip. Went back the following year, of course. But no, Nundle, loved that place down there.
Nundle has a way of dragging you back. I have to say, I love the place.
I had a big gap between. I've been there 3 times, the second and third trip, and actually I've been to Nundle 3 times, as I said, and I've never been successful there.
Yeah. All right. So, my first state forest hunt was Severn. I covered this way back in one of our first podcasts. I'd spoken to Mark without knowing who Mark was at the time, and he pointed me in the direction of Severn. And I remember getting out, had the Severn sign on the dirt road, being so happy that I'd finally found somewhere that was public land that I could hunt. Coming from New Zealand, moving to Queensland, I got over that sign and did a big air jump in the air, and got myself with a big selfie. I was so ecstatic. We took goats and pigs at Severn on that first trip, and as much as that place is booked out and various parks that we talk about are really booked out, they still produce. So anyway, next question, and next one was from Frank as well, and I'll just cover this one off back around state public land. If you could turn back time to where you first started public land hunting, what would you do differently, Mark?
Nothing. I know that's not that informative, but philosophically, it's always a learning curve. I remember my first state hunt at Nundle. I remember exactly what happened. I remember what I was learning. I was walking along, and it's a big learning curve. So I wouldn't want to change it because I might not learn what I learnt. So that's it.
That's good.
Very deep. Jono?
Yeah, look, for myself, obviously I said I've been to Nundle 3 times and I've not taken anything. I'll still continue to go back. What would I change? Well, I would be a lot more patient. I wouldn't, when I first went to Nundle, it was all about getting all over the park, and it's a huge park. Let's go look at this area, let's look at that area, look here, instead of looking for sign, finding the animals, and then working that area. We were just trying to cover as much ground as we could, and not actually, focusing on the sign itself. That's what I've taken away from hunting, especially state forest. When you find sign, you find animals. You've got to find that sign first, not just cover as much ground as you can.
Yeah, don't leave game to find game is a good motto.
Correct.
That's it.
I've got a completely useless answer too, Frank, and that is, I wish I'd found it earlier. If I could go back in time, I'd like to find state forest hunting earlier because, man, there's just so much land to cover there, and I want more time in the bush. So, hopeless answer for you. It's not giving you any tips, but that's the way it goes. Big Willie back from New Zealand after taking a tar. He won he won a trip from the Hunters Club that we often see on social. Flew to, I'm going to get most of this wrong, flew to the South Island. From what I see, at that point, his trip kicked in, jumped on a helicopter, flew up into the Alps, shot a 13-inch bull tar. Bastard. And another one for meat. So good on you, mate. Congratulations. Can't wait to get you on and talk a bit more about that. But Big Willie's question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Johnny.
No, go for it. Yeah.
What time of the day is the best time to hunt goats? Do they have habits? Or is it a fairly random thing that they get up to? I'm going to go first on that, and then I'll let Mark's long years of wisdom give you real answers. I like hunting goats because of the gentleman's game. They don't really get up early, and they don't go to bed. Like they don't get up early. They're up all day. They sleep at the same hours that we do typically. They make stupid amounts of noise, and you can call them in. If you find kids on the ground, you can bleat at them, and they'll come over, and their mum will come over, and the yearling will come over. You shoot it, and all their friends come over. So I think if you can understand their watering patterns, whether they're feeding to or away from water, usually that happens earlier in the morning, but after the sun's up, and then later again in the afternoon, you're going to find goats. They're such a good game to chase. Love it.
Oh, yeah,
Mark.
love goats.
Yeah, look, after a few years at Severn, we called them bankers' hours. We used to say, people go, oh, what time you go? Well, we don't really need to leave till about 8:30, We'll be right. And that was it. We seemed to shoot goats between 9 and 3. And as I said, we used to just call it bankers' hours, like that's what banks used to be open once upon a time. It was like that. So there was no need for early starts. There wasn't need to chase them through into the evening. Basically, you would see goats between 9 and 3. So as long as you're out early enough, so you weren't leaving, but you're out there, you're on the ground, and you're moving around, and you were settled, you'd see them sometime around 8 from 8:30 onwards. And I don't mean because they'd be moving. You might just see them beforehand, either bedded up or holding up, but around that time you'd actually see them moving. So again, they were so much easier to see because there was movement. You'd see the white moving through the trees. There's a couple of rules that we came up with goats. One of them was a rule I picked up from Adrian. He used to call it the 2 smokes rule. He said if you got on the goats and you shot a couple, just sit down for the period it would take, to have 2 smokes. If you smoked, you say you don't pursue them. You'd sit down, you'd take care of the kill, and then you'd move up, follow them up. And by that time, they'd probably resettled again, and then you'd be on them. And you could pursue a mob like that for a period of time. It was the 2 smokes rule. The other one is shoot the white ones last.
I'll tell you where the other ones are.
Don't shoot the ones that tell you where all the other ones are. So once you see a white goat, and that's what, when I'd ever take people goat hunting the first time, they'd usually shoot white goats. And we say, okay, you got one. Next time, don't shoot that one, because that one is telling you where all the others are.
Yeah.
The third rule is billies don't tend to have any concern about the welfare of any other goats. So if there's a billy with a mob and the shooting starts, that billy will disappear. It won't.
You don't care.
The goats seem to be matriarchal. They'll herd around the nanny seems to run the mob. So if you are coming across a mob of goats and you want to take them, if you take the big nanny out first, that's it. They fall apart. They don't, they'll mill around. They won't. The billies will go. They'll disappear. They'll zip off. And in fact, I've often observed billies not actually with the mob. They're just kind of off. They're in the tree line and they're a little bit off. So if you see a mob of goats and it's that time of the cycle when the billy is around the mob, just see if you can see him in the trees. Look for horns. Look for something that's laying down. Look for a horizontal shape in the scrub. Look around because there's probably a billy just hanging off somewhere like that. So seen lots of seen them in all sorts of different conditions, in different areas. You know, in Pilliga, 1 year we were in Pilliga, and they were only on sand country. You only saw them in the sand. Other times we haven't seen them in the sand at all. Rocks is always a good rocks are always a good place to check out. So, you know, rock structures, stone structures. If you see rocks, if you see a rock escarpment, go check it out. The other thing too, if you're hunting a state forest and it's one of the ones that holds goats, and there's been any clear felling, as close as you can get to that clear felling, you know, without moving into an exclusion zone, they love those trees that are on the ground, because they can then pick them. Yeah, they pick them. So I remember the first goat I shot was in an area that had just been clear felled. It's actually marked down in Pilliga when they knocked it over, because they actually marked the year when they knocked things over. It was 2009, and I took one, and at the time it was just clear felled, and they were literally just amongst the big trees, feeding on the pick that was obviously unavailable to them until the trees got dropped. So lots of stuff about goats. You'll see them, you know, usually they'll have a nanny will have, if they're in with the kids, there'll be 2 young'uns and generally one juvenile, like an in-between range. So there's like 2 generations. If they're like that, everything will clump around that nanny. So that nanny is running everything. If you stick with that nanny, that you've got that mob.
Jono, any experiences from you?
Oh, for me, I was always in the beginning. Let's get out as early as we can, and didn't see any goats. So once we started following that banker's hours, it certainly improved the success rate on the goats. But for me, I love rocks. I like climbing those rocks.
You love rocks.
I love rocks. And so I love checking out those rocky escarpments, and always find goats or goat sign. So I know we found that one escarpment that we climbed, Mark, when we found those goats on them, we climbed up there and it was just goat sign everywhere. It was just a goat factory up there. And so definitely, check out those rocky escarpments. But the other thing as well is you've got to listen. I think you've got to, you can use sound a lot to find them. So when we were in Severn earlier in the year, Mark, we used sound to find that small mob.
Yep.
That's how we found them, was through sound. So they were, they're not like deer, which are very quiet. They don't make a noise unless it's the roar. They're sitting there bleeding away. They're stupid things. And so use that when you hear them, walk towards them, and generally they're on their way to water. You could probably cut them off, or they're coming back from water, heading up to the high country. So you can cut them off, and that's what we did. Listen for them and try and find those areas that they got a drink. We went down first light on that one dam there in Severn, Mark, looking for a pig, and we heard one which at the time we didn't know was a goat, which just made some funny coughing noise, but turned out it was a billy, because we found that out later, didn't we?
Yeah, well, that was really interesting. And that's another thing, is always learning. We were on water on first light, and it sounded like there was someone over that had a smoker's cough, literally. And we were just going, what is that sound? I'd never heard that before, ever. And there were some weird sounds in Severn. There was a rooster in there somewhere. Literally, we could hear him. And I don't even know how it survived, but we could hear it. But there was this cough, and later on, we'd just taken 3 goats, and all of a sudden we hear the cough again, and turn around and there's bloody Billy coughing at us. Yeah. So he went down as well. But that's it. So sound is a really important thing. There was a place in Severn that you could literally sit up. It was it's overgrown now, so you can't really see off it, but for a long time it was clear, and you could sit there in the morning and just hit, and eventually go, oh, they're over there, I can hear them.
All right, we're moving back to the NT.
There's a lot of questions coming in about the NT, mate. So
cool. If you're still with us, we'll hit some of your questions now. First one is, Buffalo a declared pest in the NT? Yes, it is, according to the nt.gov.au site that I managed to Google while we were listening. It is. It's a pest up there, declared by the NT government. So you can hunt them all year round, although you'll struggle to hunt them all year round, because half the land that they're on is underwater during the wet season. So good luck. a follow-up question to that from somebody else. Where are you, Dave? Was when did we hunt? We hunted the last couple of days of August and the first week of September. And it was a great time. The only thing that I've heard different to that is it gets harder to hunt as the build-up comes in, and we were on the really early part of the build-up.
Yeah, there was literally 1 or 2 days into build-up.
The
Yeah.
best hunting time I've heard is maybe a month later than what we went, because it's hotter, the water is dried up more, and it brings the buffalo in to a more condensed sort of area.
Yeah.
You still got to find them though, so
Yeah.
finding those water sources was incredibly hard. But once you did, you found the life, of course. So that was.
Yeah, well, on that one, it actually leads into the next question, saying any tips on finding buff solo. So talking about water.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it took us a few days to sort of understand the patterns, but, you know, we would go from billabong to billabong looking for water or for sign. And on most of those billabongs, they were dry. The ones that held some water, obviously the animals would come in and to drink, but they weren't hanging around that. They were moving off that water. Except for Mark, where Mark had one that was actually lying in the water. So it just shows you that you've got to be ready at any opportunity. And, you know, when you see it, you just got to go from billabong to billabong. That's all you can do. Look for sign, and you might get lucky and find one in there. Just on some of those billabongs, watch out for the crocs.
Yeah. I've given it some thought, and I've given it a lot of thought. In a way, hunting a buff is the same as hunting any other animal in terms of you're looking for sign, but what you have to decide is this sign an indicator that there is animals about, or is this sign telling me there is an animal here? And that's the difference. So like when I was hunting with Brian, the first thing we did was we started looking for water. So we basically cut in the scrubbed 2Ks and then turned into the wind, and we heard these black cockatoos, and we moved towards the black cockatoos. They weren't on the water, but they let us know there was water about, and then we started finding water. And so we were following game trails, you know, and as you can imagine, a buffalo makes a fairly significant game trail, you know, and there was old buffalo turds and stuff like that. So it was like saying, well, there is buffalo in this area, or have been in this area. But then when it changed, when we went, oh, they're here. And that was because all of a sudden we found sign that was so fresh, it was like, they're somewhere here. And literally, I don't know if I could smell the buffalo or I could smell the buffalo turd. I don't know, but I remember, you know, I just
for a week, Mark, it could have been
something. It's something, you know. It's like bang, there is something here. It's not like, oh, it's a bit whiffy. No, there is something right here. So first thing, and again, when I think about it, the sign told us exactly what was happening. So we were on a buffalo track, and there was water about, and there was 2 different sized turds, and there was 2 buffalo, and they're different size. And imagine that. So bang, then we just got this smell. Went, holy moly, there's something here. You know, and you think about it, it's a wild beast, and it's big. It stinks. And then I found just a puddle in the sand or the dirt, and I put my hand on it, and water came up out of that. I went, okay, they're just here somewhere. So something has just done a pee in 30+ degree heat in dirt, and it's still holding water. So it's just here. And again, and literally within 30 seconds, we saw them. So it's that kind of bringing that picture together, finding old sign to say, okay, we're in an area that holds animals, and then refining it and getting more and more pointed to going, okay, we've gone from knowing there's animals here to knowing we are in the presence of an animal.
Yeah, I found the same thing. The very first day that we were there, we were exploring a creek bed, and I came across a buffalo turd, and I was pretty excited about it, but it was as hard as a brick, right? But that didn't matter. That just told me there were buffalo there, and throughout the week, we were piecing together the sign, and you know, we didn't know what their habits were really. We were guessing a lot, and we were piecing that puzzle together over the week. And then I found what I thought was a really nice fresh sign. One of the videos I was talking to Matt about it. He was saying, yeah, it's a couple of hours old. I thought, okay, well, it's a couple of hours old. That's what that feels like. And then when we found some really fresh stuff, it was like, okay, this is falling to bits. It's almost slopping down the sides of its own, you know, own walls. And yeah, going back now after seeing all of that, I think we'd be able to analyze a lot of that information and
Definitely.
and put ourselves in the right place a lot quicker. But that's part of the fun, right? It was
That's
awesome.
right. It's like
Yeah.
that morning when we crossed that track, and we literally crossed Buffalo. Buffalo had crossed our track within 8 hours because we'd walked on that road the night before, and we found prints on top of our prints. So that said, okay, something has come through here. And then we unfortunately, it was a sign of poachers. And then we went, hang on, that vehicle track, that's a different track. There's been turnaround. Something's turned around there. That's weird. Went up road, and then we saw the birds and went up, and there was a buffalo, and it was still bleeding. So it was only dead a couple of hours at the most.
Yeah. Nasir, the second part of your question, are there state forests in the Northern Territory where we can hunt? This will answer Dave's question on access as well. There is I forget what they've called. What they call it now.
Backcountry.
Backcountry.
Backcountry. I have it. I've got a backcountry license.
Yep. So there's a backcountry. Well, there you go. You want to follow that through then, Mark?
So there is public land hunting in the Northern Territory. It's different to public land hunting in, say, in New South Wales or Victoria, in that to hunt public land in the Northern Territory, you have to hunt with a resident. So you need to build contacts of someone up there who will hunt with you, who's a resident and who has the public land license. But the license itself is dead easy to get. There's no issue with that, and allows you to go. It's not as I suppose the various, they're not forests, but the spaces are not as plentiful as, say, in Victoria and New South Wales, but there is certainly public land hunting up there, and there's a couple of guys on YouTube who specialise in doing some really nice getting public land animals in the Northern Territory, pigs and buffalo. So, yep, you can do it. Takes a bit of planning and a bit of getting onto a club or something like that, and making some connections, but you can certainly do it for a public land price.
Brian Boyle, who we've had on the podcast as well, who ran that program, he's only just left the NT. He's now back in New South Wales. But he ran that for a while. What he said to me was, yes, you have to hunt with a resident, as per what Mark said. But he said if you gave the public land hunting, the backcountry hunting people a call, or you contacted them on Facebook, they would tee you up with someone that had a license up at the NT. He said it'd be very rare that they couldn't find someone to help you out and get you onto that public land. It's Litchfield National Park that they've got access to, or part of it. It's a big park. They've had some great success in it. So, don't let access deter you. Get onto that website, ask the questions, and get up there and have a crack at it. So, you don't need an R license, but you need their license. And we've answered your other question.
It's not dissimilar from the old license
It's very similar.
Brian,
Yeah.
but
Very
it's
similar.
it's also focusing on water management, hydration,
100%.
and things like that, because it's
not
completely
getting eaten
different
by
conditions.
crocodiles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more self-awareness type training as well.
Yeah.
Or education. I
Um,
was going to say on that one, Dave also asks, how did the 9.62 put the buff down? For me, it worked really, really well. It was a great caliber. Do you need it? No, because you had some awesome success with that BRX.
Yeah. The 3006 did a great job, but I was lucky enough to punch one straight through the front of his chest and into his heart, and he didn't really want to go anywhere after that. He was also a smaller buffalo. He was not a king bull buff. He was a juvenile. He was probably only a year to 2 years old, so he didn't take as much lead. Mark, you had a different experience.
Yeah, look, the first buff I shot it in the head and it was dead. It literally just deflated. So yeah, perfect. And then the second buff that I didn't see busted from cover, and then that changed the game. That changed very different. That was very different. No, I had to shoot that thing because it was moving at speed and it was big. So the 9.3 was I was glad to have the 9.3. I was glad to have a heavy hitter. Though I was shooting 250 grain barns, which is actually technically a bit light for 9.3. 9.3 is generally around I think it's a 286. That's kind of the standard
That's
round.
what I was
like
shooting,
a,
the SMB.
that's a really good round, that SMV. The reason I went for the barns in 250 was it's a bit flatter out to 200. So because I wanted to take a gun that I could use on everything. So, you know, I just wanted an NT gun, so pigs, donkey, whatever it is. So I wanted to have a little bit more, a different ballistics than you might want for something purely for buffalo. So I wanted a bit more legs, but that's it. They certainly worked. It's not on the wall. It's on top of the garage shed, still drying out, getting the fat out of the bones, but it works. The other thing about the 9.3 is it's a mild gun.
The recoil's very mild.
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's mild.
No, it's not.
It's mild.
Don't listen to these two. I shot their rifle at the range and it nearly took my arm off.
No, I really enjoy that 9.3.
Easy peasy. Yeah.
I'm going
Great
to hunt
rifle.
tomorrow, so I was getting the rifle out, and I'm taking my 308, my TK 308, and I got the 308 rounds out, and they feel like little 22s in my hand after holding
Yeah,
the
they
9.3.
do. Yeah, look, I can't speak highly enough of the 9.3. I think it's a great all-rounder, and that's a terrible thing to say because it's almost an impossibility. But up there, it's a great all-round caliber. It'll knock everything that's up there because the stuff up there is big. The pigs are big. Because for example, when the guy said you're going to shoot a donkey, I went, oh, really? And I thought literally, those things that they put kids on at fairs and they lead them around a paddock. I was thinking about something that was like a big Labrador. No, donkey up there is a big animal. It's kind of like it's far more horse-like than donkey-like, or what I thought was donkey. Big animal,
some lead as
big
well.
animal, swallow some lead. And that's what people have always said. They said them donkeys are tough, and I went, really? How can something? But no, it's a big animal. The pigs up there are big, real big. Ian shot 2 pigs, and both of them. Well, one was a Godzilla, but the other one, you'd be very, very happy if you shot that anywhere else. It kind of looked smaller compared to the first one, but it was a big animal. So the 9.3 would be a great. And again, we were shooting within 100 meters, so running the 286s would be a really good. 286 with a very stout projectile would be a really good option.
Yeah, I think.
And every man needs a safari gun. Okay, that's it. Everyone needs a safari gun.
Yeah, I think next triple buff, because I'm hooked. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to stick to the 9.3 with 286s. I think I might change the projectile potentially to something a bit more robust. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those SMBs; they were great. But yeah, I think I'll stick to those 286s that perform perfectly on the ones that I took. Yeah. Put them down. I still took 3 shots, but they put them down.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be using the BRX from Beretta, the new platform that the team at Beretta lent us for the trip, which was just unreal. And if you don't know the rifle, it's a straight pull action. It's very modular. Like all of the components just click out. You can dial down the trigger weights. You can do all sorts of things with it. But it coming out with a 9.3 by 62 barrel, because it's interchangeable barrels. So to be able to have that in 30.06 and also take up the 9.3 barrel will make for a very interesting trip next time, because it should be out by the time we head up to the NT again. And watch this space. It's a great rifle.
Yeah. The only downside was the 9.3 was magazine size is quite small.
Yeah, as you found out, had a bit of feeding issues.
Yeah, that's right.
The other downside to it is 9.3 by 66 is something similar, isn't it, Jono?
It is very, very similar. Yeah, but they don't work with each other, unfortunately.
No, apparently not. So unfortunately, we were unlucky not to take a pig because We didn't realise that they were different rounds. And
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was a pig, not a buffalo, coming out in.
and not one that was coming out.
That's
of,
it. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a piece on that. Watch the space. Watch the channel. There's a video coming out about that where I show that. Because yeah, it was an interesting, I suppose, incident that we had there. We had an opportunity on a pig, and something so minor as 9.3 by 6.2 or 9.3 by 6.6 can actually have a big impact and could be a potentially dangerous scenario. So yeah, there'll be a video coming out about that. So.
Yeah, and Frank, straight up with your question, did I enjoy using the aim point? I loved it. Look, there was a situation on our first encounter with buffalo where I started to think that I wish I had a scope because they were at distance, and I was umming and ahhing about it. But the speed of the straight pull and the aim point on that BRX was awesome. And I may not have kept it at shoulder and cycled those rounds as fast as I should have, Dave. But instinct made me drop it and look and put it back up again. It was still quick. I really enjoyed it. The quick target acquisition with the aim point, brilliant. I really wouldn't want to change a thing. Questions, Jono? We've got another one.
Yeah, let's have a look. Well, Dave's dropped in just talking about those 286s grains. He said 286 Woodley hydros under 100 meters. So that'll be deadly. That'll be awesome. Hopefully the Woodley guys have got their factory back up and running, and we can get some of those rounds because obviously they had the fire up there. He also says 306 awesome caliber.
Yes, I guess.
We're jumping around a little bit. So Nasir's asking about some of the state forest stuff. So let's jump into one of those quickly. He's just said, would you consider Tugelo a productive state forest? I saw a few deer in Tugelo concentrated. So yep, I've never been to Tugelo. So
yeah,
actually I have been to Tugelo.
I shot the first deer I've shot with my eldest son, just him and I. So he's been hunting for a few years, and it's always been with a group of adults. Him and the first deer that him and I got together this year, Tugelo.
Okay. Yeah. I have been in Tugelo. Very wet, very muddy, but it's a beautiful forest.
Yep.
There's some awesome steep country down there. There's rumours of some very large animals down in the steep country that you've got to walk all the way through to get to some fringe farmland. Yeah, I would persevere there. I've seen some great animals in there. In fact, since I'm such a nice guy, hit me up after this and I'll throw you a spot or two to go and explore. I've got a couple that are worth looking at.
Cool. Yeah, we did the opposite. We just drove in there, and as soon as we came through the front gate, turned. First track that appeared was on the left, turned down that, drove to a place that was, because it was wet, found a place, this was a place we could park, safely parked up, and just started walking. I mean, we just walked the tracks, did some cross country between the tracks, and in fact the deer was literally standing at the car waiting when we came back.
And on that, is November, December a good time to hunt in Nundle or Tugelo? I've only been there in winter. I'm not sure about summer.
There is no such time as a bad time, but
except
for a fire or rain. But if I would not, I'd hunt Nundle that time of year. You're legally allowed to hunt deer then, so there's no issue with that. There'll be deer on the ground. Everything will still be there. They won't be rutting. They'll have different behaviours because it's summer. It might concentrate them a little bit more around water, depending on what the year turns out like in terms of with the rain and so on. But I would most definitely go hunting. I actually would like to hunt Nundle in summer. I reckon it would be a really good experience.
Yeah, I think it does concentrate them more around water, and late November, early December is when they're going to drop their fawns. So you're going to have heavily pregnant does or hinds that are going to be closer to water because they don't like moving as much when they're full pregnant. So there's that. The other consideration is that if you're going in December, then they're likely to have fawns on the ground. So just be careful. But you're likely to find mum with a fawn and a yearling. So, if you were concerned about knocking over mum and leaving an orphaned fawn, then look for those yearlings that are with mum still, because they typically will be. Would be my only thing. And be careful about water. It can get damn hot in there in summer, but
and the bucks will be together.
Yep.
The bucks. In fact, when I was down there in July, we saw a bachelor mob. They're already starting to mob back up. So the bucks will be together. They'll have cast. They'll be forming. They'll be so yeah.
And also, Pilliga in
pigs will be
summer
there.
is good. I mean, I know it's hot out there, but I mean, I was in the Pilliga this time a few years ago. So getting on to November, it's hot, but it's great hunting. You've done Pilliga, what, December, January, Mark?
I've hunted Pilliga throughout the year, for a reason, because I wanted to see what it was like through the year. So I've hunted it in dead winter, and it is cold in there. And I've hunted it in late January, 40-degree plus days, and it's really hot in there. And storms can be very violent and very quick. However, the animals are still there. They don't go to Bali for the whatever. They're still there. They're like every animal. The conditions the prevailing conditions control how their behaviour. So I've been in Pilliga when it's just after rain and it's quite hard to find animals because it's such a big place. And there's a million little puddles of water on the ground, so they can water anywhere. I've also been there when it's drought, when they just can't. They don't leave the water. So if you can get onto the water quietly, they're there.
Yeah. Another question on state forest hunts. Over the years that you've been hunting in state forests, have you found those forests have changed much? Mark?
I'll go first because I did 2 years in Nundle. My first 2 trips to Nundle were back to back, and then I had a 5 or a 6 year gap, and the forest was completely different. Areas where I remember driving down the track, it was now open country. All the the blocks had been completely cleared. Excuse me. There were roads that used to be there that were now sort of impassable. The country looked completely different. It was remarkably different. We need to remember that these forests they're active forests. They're forestry operations that are taking place. They've got a plan in place from the forestry. So there's going to be areas that get cleared, replanted. So expect them to change. And just because there was an area that you found, last year or 5 years ago that was good, it's not going to, potentially might not be there. And there's, because of those logging operations, there's often a lot of exclusion zones, areas that I see Severn, there's a huge exclusion in there, so they must be pretty active in the forest at the moment. So yes, those forests do change, definitely.
Yeah, totally agree. They get changed by human behaviour, so forestry operations. Once we're in the Pilliga and they were doing the survey for the inland rail, so that that kind of changed that created all these really weird little exclusion zones.
I remember that one.
Yeah, strange exclusion zones. Forestry activity, most definitely. Then you've got the fact that we've gone from drought to La Nina, so that's changed. So what it looks like in terms of the amount of water around. Severn is the Garden of Eden at the moment. It's so that changes, and the third change is that, remember, forests within a larger ecosystem. So there's private private farms around them. So if those farms are doing things differently too, expect the forest and especially the animals to change their behaviour. So yeah, it's constantly changing, which is why the best way I think to hunt a state forest is always to go down there and go, okay, what's happening, and then adjust to that. And it usually might take you a day or two, but to actually go, okay, I've been here before, I've been successful before, but I need to kind of say I'm almost starting again. What am I going to do differently? What's the forest telling me that I need to be doing?
Yeah, and also from an e-scouting perspective, if you're trying to find some areas, in those forests, when that satellite photo was taken, on Google Maps or Google Earth, to what it is now, they could have come in and cleared that entire paddock of trees. So it could change. So you really have to treat it, look at the maps that's provided by DPI, etc., and look at all the exclusion zones and see where you can hunt it, where you can't. But you really have to wait till you're on the ground. I couldn't believe that. There's that track that we went on that first afternoon, and that was huge, big forestry block, and it was completely open country. When we drove through, it was completely different.
And it's like when we went down into Severn and we went down to the southern block, there was this band of like a burr that basically wrecked your clothes. But basically that burr band appeared on no map. But what it did was, we found no animals had moved through it. Nothing was pushing through that. They were just simply going. So there was a whole part of the forest that was excluded, not because of human activity, but this kind of growth. So that's what you've got to consider as well. These things are happening that might not have any rhyme or reason to them.
Good one. New question for state forests. Coming up recently about and usage of thermals in state forests. Do you have any opinions on those changes? Do we intend to show that on our podcast?
Well, we kind of already have. So I used a thermal down in Nundle in July for a scout. So I didn't have a rifle with me at the time. What I did was it was in the truck. I wasn't carrying it, and I went out pre-dawn and just started looking around and seeing what I could see. Didn't see any. I saw lots and lots of kangaroos. Didn't see any deer. I saw one rabbit. But the idea of using them as a scouting tool is open to you. And then I don't really have I don't have a negative opinion of them, because I think they're actually a useful tool. I've hunted with people who hunt with thermals, actively hunt with thermals, and I must admit I didn't like it as much, because I think they kind of almost over rely on them. But from a scouting point of view, from a scouting tool, like a new type of optic, I find them to be very, very useful. So I'd be keen to see how you would put one together within a state forest.
I mean, I've never used a thermal. Pretty keen to give it a try from a scouting perspective, just to see what it can bring, especially in winter down in Nundle. I think it would be pretty interesting. So yeah, definitely keen to give it a try, and see what it looks like.
Cool. All right. Next question from John. So the NT trip was a great success from watching all the videos. Where does it now sit on the bucket list for doing it again versus a new adventure?
Well, we are doing it again.
We are doing it.
We're going again.
Yeah.
John,
Filling up
we're
my
going
bucket.
again, brother. John, bucket list. It's gone. We're doing it again.
The bug bit pretty quickly for me, and the withdrawal symptoms were there from the moment I jumped on the airplane flying back to Brisbane.
Yeah.
And I was already thinking about going back. I loved it. It was an awesome trip. So for me, it did tick a bucket list item, but I've now made that bucket even bigger, and I want to keep filling it up with more buffalo adventures. So, for me, it was an amazing trip. I absolutely loved it. The experience, the people we went with, the hunting. It was hot, but it was dusty, but it was amazing. It was it was awesome.
Ditto.
Definitely.
I've been there twice now. The first time I went up there completely unprepared. I'm pretty sure it was the same time of year, but it was hot. It was hot this time, but I wasn't expecting it to be quite as humid as it was. And it just kicked my ass and sent me home. It's pretty much the only way to put it. So I was reluctant this time around, because it was either head up the NT or go on a samba trip, and I kind of really wanted to go samba hunting. But this opportunity proved to be too good to be true, and I got on board with it, and then I got super excited about it as we started to plan it, and I can't speak highly enough of it. It's very different to anything else we've done, or I've done, compared to hunting deer and goats. The only thing I could liken it to was Pilliga in the summer, but it had a different feeling about it. At one point, Jono and I were tracking a bull through this scrub, and I turned around to Jono and said, Do you think we should be aimlessly walking through this thick scrub with a buffalo right there ready to stomp us into the dirt? Like it's. I've often wondered what it would be like hunting in the US, where you're not the only apex predator. If something's hunting you at the same time as you're hunting. Well, I kind of got that feeling at points in time. I know we were walking into that canyon, Mark. One day there was this really steep, rocky canyon we're walking through, and I'm just going, man, this is the dumbest thing so far. If they decide to come out this canyon, we've got nowhere to go. We're going to scramble up a rocky cliff. The experience that Mark had when he was shooting that big buff, that thing was just bulldozing its way up a 2 meter, cliff, wasn't it? It didn't care. So these things can move. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, the NT is
Certainly,
addictive. Sorry, any comments, Mark, on head shooting versus shoulder shooting the buff?
Well, a set headshot did exactly as you'd expect. A running shot on a bigger buff did probably much as you'd expect, and I only had 2 rounds in the rifle at the time, because I put one into so I was out pretty quick, and I was single loading as I was following it up, and I got within about 20 yards of it, and after that I actually had a pretty good thought. I thought I probably shouldn't have done that, but at the time I was just doing it.
Sketchy.
So yeah, and that's probably what I think most about the NT was when we were up in that escarpment country, and I was just going, birds don't even live up here, let alone a buffalo. And then when I shot that one, because as I said, as you guys know, I wanted one with the curly horns. I wanted a buff with curly horns, and I found one. And so yeah, it's difficult to, like all good hunting trips, it's actually difficult to properly put it into context if you weren't there. But it also reinforces the fact that we all so much want to go back. I think also reinforces how special it was. There's certainly sambar, duck. There's lots of things I want to do.
Oh, it's still one in Victoria.
But I want to add them to my bucket rather than take one thing out and put something in. I'm greedy that way. I want more in the bag. I don't want to replace anything.
Yeah, Dave, a bit more on your question about head shooting versus shoulder. The comment that I got from Boyley, who was up there with us, was head shooting is risky business because those things spend their lives smashing their skulls against each other. Bullets not going in. Whereas on the other side, shoulder shooting or getting it in behind the shoulder and into the lungs and heart, there is a lot of animal there with a lot of adrenaline, and it's going to keep going. They are just tough, super tough. So I don't think there's a right answer there, mate.
In regards to the headshot, it was because it was actually I was in a position to take a headshot. So the animal was wallowing. It was facing away from me. It didn't know it was there, and the back of its head was exposed to me. So I was able to very easily just aim. So I wasn't shooting it, front on. So I was able to shoot in the back of the head, and like any animal that gets hit with a 9.3 in the back of the head, it didn't even raise up. It just literally, went limp, sunk down more into the water, which is actually a bad thing because when I think about it, if we had to retrieve it, we'd be worried about what was in there with it. But whereas the one that was running, I did what I would be doing if I was shooting a deer. I was trying to shoot it up in the heart lung. That's it. It was moving. So yeah, I don't do headshots unless it's the optimal shot. And in fact, on the first day when we came, or the first time we hit Buff and we went up to that herd, and that herd bull was looking at us and he was sniffing, doing that typical kind of ad for the Northern Territory where it's looking at us. It was showing its chest at me, and I was wondering if I should drive one into its chest, into the boiler room. But then it turned and it put its kind of shoulder in front of me, and I thought, you know what, I probably couldn't smash that comfortably on an animal that big, and not and be comfortable that it wouldn't charge off, because it was such a big animal.
That was a huge bull that.
And
Well,
it just kind
let's
of
add a bit more to
put
that.
its shoulder there.
Our first experience with the buffalo when we got up there on the second day was a mob of 30 of them.
That's right.
Like it was,
With that huge
it was
bull
unbelievable.
like that.
Yeah,
Huge,
and it
huge
was
bull.
yeah.
Yeah.
And 30 pairs of eyes, 30 pair of eyes is very hard to sneak up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, very right. Yeah. Hey, Frank's question: besides weight scales, what would you definitely take next trip to the NT? Jono, you said something the other day that you would take. I don't know if you recall it.
No, I don't. No.
Yeah, there was something that was said. Anyway, the question still stands. If you can think of something.
For me, I would probably take less.
Yeah,
To be honest.
I was going to say, Frank, I'd flip it over and I'd take less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Would you believe it? I had a jacket, I had a thermal shirt, and I had a poly fleece jumper, and I'd heard it got cool overnight there, so I was pretty well loaded up with fuzzy stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take that again.
So with our gear, what we took, Frank, was we took camping, camping gear.
Yeah,
Awesome, Frank.
Yeah, Frank. The answer is me. The answer is me. That's what you'd take next time, says Frank.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, mate. Sure. If we can get you in a duffel bag, you're fine. So yeah, I take less gear. We took like hiking gear. So though one thing I do is I took my smallest tent. I wouldn't do that again. I'd take one slightly bigger. But your sleeping gear, obviously a mat, you can't replace that. But I took a sleeping bag. I probably wouldn't take a sleeping bag again. I'd probably just take next time I'd just take a bag liner. And if I got cool, I'd just, basically drag clothes on top of myself. I'd take less. Interesting stuff like up there. If you watch the video, there's a couple of shots with me carrying a saw. The guys in NT, Brian and Matt, they don't carry knives. They go to Bunnings and they buy Stanley knives or the equivalent of Stanley knives and cheap saws, and that's what they use for butchering.
Yeah.
So that and they basically they'll get 2 or 3 buff per saw and Stanley knife, and then they're useless and they just replace them. So take less.
That Stanley knife was used to cut the head skin down to the bone, so you didn't get all of that gristle and stuff in the saw
And the
itself.
skin is so thick as well. It's
Incredible.
ridiculous.
As you can imagine. But even the skin on the head, you'd think it'd be thinner.
It wasn't. It was pretty thick stuff.
So moving into clothing, there was another question that came in earlier. How did the boots hold up after witnessing the boilie shuffle and the long kilometres over the hardened footprints from the previous wet season? I'll go first on that. The advice that was given to me before we went was to not bring your big Samba, high country hunting boots. I run a pair of lower Z8s, I think they are. And they're not a heavy boot. They're a pretty light boot, really, compared to some of the other lowers. But I decided not to take those, and I went to one of the shoe stores and picked up a pair of God, I can't even remember what brand they were now, but they were basically an all synthetic. What I was looking for was the lightest boot I could find, and when I mean boot, I mean ankle hiking style boot that didn't have any waterproofing in it. You didn't need it up there, and it just makes your foot sweat. So that's what I was looking for. Would you believe it? You can't find those sorts of boots. They were Keens, what I bought. They were Keens. In the end, they were a synthetic pair of Keens, completely synthetic, but they were still a waterproof one. The only downside of those was the only colour they came in was black. Black in the down having lunch and had my feet in the sun, got pretty damn warm. But as far as boot, they were awesome. They were light, comfortable on your feet, and I had 0 foot problems whatsoever.
Yeah, I took a lightweight pair of Merrill hiking boots. They were the waterproof ones, but they're obviously very breathable, and I had no issues. I wouldn't have wanted to wear my leather boots up there, that's for sure. They were perfect. Those Merrell hiking boots, absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I did wear leather hiking boots. I took my Zambalans. I had a problem on one of the days with socks that turned into blisters, but just kept going. She's fine. Yeah, that's it. Just keep going.
Is that healed yet? There's a fair hole in your foot.
Well, So, I found the boots didn't. The boots themselves were okay. I just one day it was particularly sweaty and the sock kind of started bunching around my heel and that was it. And once it started, that was it. But I've found that I've actually bought a pair of boots for summer in the NT. They are lowers, but they are a synthetic non-waterproof boot. Managed to find them. They're not cheap though. It's actually it's very difficult to find that, but I'm very keen to try them out next year.
Just rolling on with the gear questions, Mark. How did the rest of the clothing choices hold up? We were in the heat. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, go, mate.
I was going to say I didn't change my clothing that I would use that I would use in the Pilliga. It was the same clothing. It was just, obviously long sleeve for the sun. I wore long pants, just for sun protection. That was the big thing. Was probably sun protection and stuff that's breathable, but no different to what I wear in the Pilliga.
Yeah, I wore the very ultra light pants that Hunter's Element put out that have got the air mesh back of your knees and down your legs. You can zip them open, those sorts of things. Sun Smart was the really important part of this. Getting heat stroke and things like that was just something we were very, very careful about. We were watching each other's, the way that we were holding ourselves, and if there were any changes in that, then we were pretty well. We were hopefully going to be pretty quick to spot dehydration, and luckily enough, we didn't have that problem. But I think long sleeves and long pants certainly help with that. And I was trying the Ringers Western long shirts. They've got a lot of ventilation around them. They're a cotton sort of stretch fabric. Not as light as some of the gear that Mark and Jono were wearing, but I found them to be really, really good. The only problem I find with stuff that they put out is a lot of the venting is, over your shoulders and down your back. It gets closed up when you stick a pack on. That was... It didn't cause a problem. I was comfortable the whole time. I was surprised how comfortable I was with long sleeves and long pants on the whole time. But I wouldn't change that at all.
Yeah, I just I wore a couple of the Columbia fishing shirts, the technical ones. So they're cotton blend type thing, are technical. So they got the wicking action in them. They're really good. I also wore a couple of the Breda shirts, and there's one day you can. Boyley said something like, I love the camo pattern because you could just see the salt stains in it, it was just the white lines in it. Yes, you're just going to get hot. So there's not, other than not wearing anything, everything's just going to gather sweat. But it's more the fact that you're walking through, country that's got, can be bit sharp and prickly and rocky. So you want to protect yourself. And again, it's 30 plus every day, if not higher. There was that one afternoon we turned up and it was close to 40, and then we started walking in the sun. There was no way you were going to avoid a sweat, but you didn't want to get burnt because you wanted to be in the game the next morning. So yeah, just long sleeves, long pants, and a good. I think the hardest thing to find is a good hat.
Yeah. Next one on the list is GPSs. Jono, what GPS did you use?
I just used my my Garmin watch, which has got the built-in GPS. So I would record the track. I'd mark where we started from, and then obviously it would record the track. I can do a route back from that. Obviously, if I wanted to do a straight line or do a backtrack, I just use my watch for that. And I recorded all the hunt tracks. Plus, I get all the information of the hunt, how far we walked, all that detail was perfect. No, that didn't need a handheld. I did have my phone with me, but I didn't have any signal. So Google Maps or anything like that's not going to be of use. Yeah, thanks Optus. Yeah, I thought the Garmin watch was just perfect. Mark, I think you took your Rhino, didn't you?
Yeah, so because I've got the Bino rig with the Rhino pouch, and I just kept it. The Rhino's a great GPS. The thing is, we didn't use them all that often. We just used them more of the kind of return home. So when we left, if we're especially going on a big walk, we just basically waypoint it so we knew where we were going back to. We weren't following maps and contours. We were literally searching for water. So that drove the direction. The wind and water drove the direction.
Yeah.
So it was only you wouldn't need a overly complicated GPS for the kind of hunting we were doing. It was more about where's the truck?
Can it get you home? Mark,
Yeah, so where's the truck?
How far is it?
Yeah, that's right. How far is it? Where is the truck? Because there was one night we kind of did a quick march back to where we thought we were, where the car was, and we went, oh, hang on, we've got 3Ks. So we weren't lost. It was we were on a track. We came out on the track on a different point and realised, well, we had a long way back. So it wasn't hard navigation by any means.
Yeah, I used my Garmin Phoenix as well, and again, same as John, I just hit a waypoint so I could find my way back, and I found that was really good. The topography was, yes, there was some hills, but they were features. Once you saw the features, you basically navigated off those features. You knew where the car and the camp were in relation to those. So it was never a real drama. We covered, I don't know, 20 to 30 Ks on foot a day. It was pretty hot, like nasty sort of hot conditions. But yeah, certainly GPS. I'm not saying don't take one, but we use the basics of their.
Yeah, you wouldn't need a really fancy one, just something that you can mark your start point.
That's it.
And then that you can get back to home. That's all you need.
Backtrack function is what you really need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Favorite pack? I'll let you two answer that because you had the same one, and I would run what you have next time for sure.
Yeah, so I've got the QU. What is it? The Adventure 23, I think. Mark, is that
Adventure, something like that. Yeah, I haven't got it handy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There it is. Because I'm actually getting ready for a hunt tomorrow. So this is the Adventure 2300 QU. I've used that for the first time this year in the raw. And obviously now in the NT, I love that pack. It's so comfortable for me. It really fits me well, and it's got it's got all the pockets and space. And yeah, thanks, Frank. Yes, the
Malibu Barbie pack.
I've upgraded, mate. I've upgraded. No, I love that pack. I think it's great.
Barbie is upset.
I can put everything that I need in there. Carried all the water. I mean, we were carrying quite a water system that we had going. We had large Yetis with ice. We had a smaller Yeti with electrolytes, and then I still had a 2-liter bladder in the back. So we had, we had a lot of weight in there, and it was super comfortable to do, 20 or 30 Ks a day. So yeah, Dave agreed completely. Those QUs are great packs, and I think Ian, you said you're gonna be upgrading to one as well, aren't you?
Yeah, but I've tried a couple of different packs. I've never really been happy with my mid sort of size day pack. For a couple of days, I carried around a 75-litre pack up there, under the grand expectations that I was going to have to be carrying large amounts of bone out every day. So I could have left that at camp till the last hour, in hindsight. But we discussed carrying a meat hauler style pack out there, and that's what I took. But I also took my smaller one. Not overly happy with it, so I'll be moving on to the QU.
And the other thing is, it was a good carry-on bag for the plane too.
Yeah.
So it fits into that carry. So for the travelling hunter, it was a good size. The reason I got mine originally was that whilst and if you look at any videos, it's the pack I carry most. I mean, I carried it today for about 5 hours. The benefit of that particular brand, I call it Kui. I don't know, I can't even pronounce it properly. But anyway, is that pack comes in a different frame size, even though the literage stays the same. So if you're like me and you need something that's a bit taller, you can buy it in the long frame, so it fits you. So because often, with smaller packs, it's a smaller frame, so you end up not being able to use the waist strap or the chest strap, and you're kind of using it just like a school bag. That you can actually use it as it is designed. If you're over 6 foot, you just buy the bigger frame version, and that's what was the big selling point for me. Other than the fact it's well made, and it's got lots of pockets, and it's got lots and lots of pockets in it,
tons of storage.
and it's got some of the really good pockets are the two belt pockets. They'll carry one of them. I put the EPIRB or the
Zelio,
locator beacon in and stuff like that. You can have it there. It works really well. And but you can set it up so you can actually use it like a proper pack. So when you are carrying red deer out or something like that, or when I lashed the buff horns to the back of it and carried it out, no problem.
Excellent. Next question, back to state forest hunting. Nasir, are there any other productive state forests near Brisbane for deer other than Nundle, Tuggerlow, Hanging Rock, etc., etc.? Butterleaf certainly has deer. It's partway down the New England. I know a number of people that have taken deer there or have seen deer there, so check that one out. It's not an easy block to hunt, but it's closer, so go and have a look. And I imagine there are other deer. It's one of those things. When I first started state forest hunting, everyone told me what parks were crap. And in my experience, you've got to go and have a look for yourself. Just because one person didn't see them. I tell you, how many people have told us that there's no goats in Severn?
Everybody.
So many people have told me that. Anyway, you shouldn't believe them. And the same goes for some of these other parks. So go and have a look yourself, but Butterleaf for sure.
I've explored a number of those parks. So on what you might say on the eastern side of the New England Highway, that area, they hold deer. They do. I've seen deer in there on a number of occasions. The benefit of spending the few extra hours of travelling to Nundle is you're going to increase your chances of taking a deer. And it's just going to be you will take a deer in Butterleaf if things work for you, you will. But you're much more likely to take a deer in Nundle, and you're more likely to see deer, and you're more likely to see other things like pigs as well. So whilst you might be saving yourself 3 hours travel time, or not even that really, between those, you're saving at least a couple of hours travel time, you're actually increasing your chances greatly. So I'd actually say, if you're thinking about it and you're kind of going, is it worth the couple of extra hours? It is. It's worth a couple of extra hours.
100% agree.
And if you follow Ian's approach, which is to go through Walker, you do save an extra hour from Brisbane.
It's a good trip.
It's a much better way in. It's a much better way in. And so you at Uralla, you turn towards Walker, and then you drive into the top of the forest. So you come into Nundle from the top rather than from the bottom when you come in through Tamworth. It's a much more pleasant drive. You've got much more opportunity to see deer as you're driving in, and Walker's a really nice town. It's got 2 shopping centres, and it's got a petrol station and 3 coffee shops and stuff like that. It's a nice place to stop. So you can get your supplies, you can get fuel up, you can get a hamburger, and then you've got about an hour and a bit drive to Ponderosa.
But you feel like you're in hunting land.
That's right.
40 minutes out of Walker because you're driving through 30 minutes of parkland.
That's right. You go for Walker. I think it's called is it Top Road, Topdale Road, I think it is.
Yeah.
You turn there, you go along, and then you see the Nundle Forest Way or the Forest Way. You turn on that. For about
just
10 minutes, you're through public land, and then bang, you're in the forest and you're in hunting zone all the way through.
And if you go to Tuggerlow, it's that's where the
that's right. And if you wanted to go to Tuggerlow, it's actually so much quicker to go that way to Tuggerlow because that's the best way to enter Tuggerlow through the top.
Good question. Next question, Dave. I'll explain with visuals. Here's our water system. So we had a 1.4 something litre bottle of Yeti, right? A Yeti bottle. So they're an insulated bottle, as you know. We stuffed that as tight as we could with ice, and then filled up the gaps basically with cold water. That's how we started the day. So it was already ice, and then icy cold water went into it. And that went in the pack. This one we stuffed with ice. It's about an 800 ml bottle. We stuffed that one with ice as well, and then we filled that up with water and electrolytes. So we had a good bottle of electrolytes because you were sweating out all of those minerals. And then in our packs, we had a 3 or a 4 litre bladder, depending on what we were running individually. So I was carrying 6 litres of water for every half day that we went out. But ice lasted in that overnight. So you'd hunt all day and then overnight. Every time you took a decent drink out of this one, you'd top it back up out of your bladder, and then that water would be chilled, and that would chill your core way better than drinking 30-degree water that was sitting in your bladder on your pack in the sun all day. Now, I know there's been some comment. Some people don't agree. I also have heard that drinking chilled water just every day is not as good for you as drinking, normal room temperature water. But in the conditions that we were in, it just kept our body temperature cores lower, and we didn't need to drink as much water. I found that I was never, ever super thirsty, and I just wasn't gagging for water all the time. What we did find, though, was that we started off with these things with electrolytes with no ice in them, and that was gag material. It was disgusting.
Oh, it didn't taste nice, did it?
But as soon as it was freezing cold, it was much, much easier to drink. And not one of us got dehydrated.
Nope.
And drinking all of that, excuse me, all of those electrolytes, we didn't have any cramping problems or anything like that. So, brilliant.
And the thing is, as you're going along, you're drinking through the bladder and your pack, and when you go, okay, you're going to stop. You actually only need to take a couple of sips of that cold water for it to, have an effect. And what I found was that the electrolytes became so more effective because you weren't simply sweating them out. You weren't like hot and you're sweating them out. When you had that cold water first and it seemed to kind of stabilize you, then you only needed again a small amount of the electrolytes to actually get the you actually feel like you were drinking them rather than simply sweating them straight back out. So it did have this weird effect where it made you consume a little bit less water because it seemed to be more effective.
I think we've dried up the questions.
Oh, have we? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't see them, mine, so
No, that's
Actually,
okay.
you missed one there. Brother State Forest. Have you hunted Brother State Forest?
No, it's been on my list to hunt it. There's a bunch down there that I really want to go and hunt. I hunted a number of them early on, and then I trained an indicating dog. So I actually want to go back with an indicating dog because I think I know I have more success with her. It by all reports, and its location and proximity to deer, it should have deer going through it. I suspect it's a fairly scrubby block that doesn't have a lot of decent pick on the ground, similar to I forget some of the other ones' names, but a lot of that country around there is quite scrubby. So, deer might pass through it on their way to farmland, things like that. But worth a look. On paper, it looks great.
don't know it myself, so yeah, worth having a look.
Right.
So Dave's just put a question around the electrolytes. Did you charge up on electrolytes at night before bed or just beer?
Rum.
Far out. We ran the beer down, didn't we?
I
Yeah,
would
we
take
did.
rum.
Yeah.
No, mate, we didn't. No. Once we got back into camp, it was pretty relaxed and jovial, and as you can expect with 6 fellas around a campfire in the NT.
But I think that's because we had such a good system during the day that we didn't have to charge up at night. If we didn't run that system during the day, we would have tried to be catching up at night and certainly wouldn't have drunk as much beer because that's going to dehydrate you more. So certainly didn't wake up ever with a headache or feeling stiff or sore or anything like that. We were up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And the type of electrolyte was it, Jono?
It was just Hydrolyte Sport is what we used.
Yeah.
So we bought a big 1 kilo tub, and that saw us, the 3 of us, through the week. We even had a little bit left over. So it didn't. I think we had the lemon lime flavour. When it was warm, it wasn't the tastiest, but with a bit of ice in there, it was actually pretty good and it worked. I actually bought some today for my trip tomorrow. So.
And I mean, I hunted every day, didn't so that, didn't have a problem at all. I mean, obviously when you came back at night, you were weary. But no, not a problem at all. Just, so we did a lot of Ks in pretty tough conditions. So, we're on our feet for on average like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And what we found with like observing the NT guys is that they hunt more in the afternoon.
Yeah,
So in the morning they kind of go in the morning they go kind of exploring and have a look around and have a think. It's in the afternoon they get serious, and they go looking for water in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And
There's
they'll
a couple
hunt
mornings
right, they'll hunt into dark, so it wasn't like they'll go, because, that last 90 minutes of light is when it's going to happen, more than likely, and that's, I think, all of us took buff in that period of time.
Yep.
And so, you want to be pretty good. You want to be ready for that part of the day. So you don't want to be kind of, I'm winding down now. You actually want to be right. And then when we get back to camp, we'd have a few drinks and have something to eat, and then bed and back at it again.
Yeah. Frank, to answer your question about how we kept ice for a week in an isolated area, we had two camps on, basically two camps with one overnighter, but halfway through the trip we moved camp to a different area. At that point, a couple of us went back into town. It was about a 3-hour round trip by the time we got back, but essentially we had 4 or 5 eskies stuffed full with block ice, and it lasted for 3 or 4 days, the first round, and then we sort of just had enough once we filled up for the next one. But pretty much how we did it. You had to keep
the big challenge.
Keep the ice separate. Don't put your drinks in with your stored ice. We'd take one bag out. Have it ready for. It might go into the drinks esky, and then we'd fish ice out of there for our Yetis. And we had a couple of situations where meat came back into camp and meat got dumped in with the ice, and then all of a sudden your water was stuffed, and you had to dump all of that out pretty much because you couldn't use it for your Yetis. So a couple of little learnings there, but it was difficult, but we managed. Yeah.
Certainly good eskies needed out there. I mean the heat was it was hot, and to keep that ice fresh and cold, you really needed some good eskies and lots of them. So your little cheap ones from down at from Kmart or something is not going to work. You need a decent brand that's got some good insulation on it. Certainly we had a mix of them and they all worked well, but it's a struggle in that heat. No matter what you take, it's a struggle.
Especially in the hill camp there, because there was no real shade. It wasn't as bad when we were on the Goose Lagoon, because there was proper shade there. But when in the first camp, the hill camp, there was a little bit of shade, but there wasn't really any area that you could keep them cool throughout the day. So that was also a problem. And we set tarps up to try and keep them cool, but didn't really work. So that was no doubt the biggest struggle, was keeping the ice up.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I think at an hour and 40 minutes, that's probably a pretty good session.
Sure.
I don't think we'll go and ramble on too much about other things that we might have talked about. I think that's been a really good place to put it. Frank, Dave, Big Dave FPV, we know who you are. Frank, I think I might have said Frank, Nasir and Jono. I dropped my email address or our email address in there. Send us your details. I'm going to send a gift pack out to you for participating. It's been great to have you there, and you've asked a whole bunch of questions and really made this live podcast what we hoped it would be. So really appreciate your inputs, and hopefully we'll run another one sometime in the future. And if you like the format, I think that's something that's worth doing.
Yeah. Just put some comments on and on the page, and let us know if there's anything else you want us to talk about, and we can include that in the next one.
That'll do. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks, gents.
We'll see you again.
Cool.
See you guys.
See you guys.